We're going to start East Greenbush Central School District Board of Education meeting. Let's stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And we have everyone in tonight. We're going to start today with the approval of our draft minutes. Give me a second while I log back into my computer here. All right, and everyone was present at our last meeting. Is there any questions or comments for the draft minutes? None. Is there a motion to approve? Mr. Buno, is there a second? Ms. Turner, everyone in favor? Everyone is in favor. Motion passes. There's move on in our agenda to the board forum. I'm gonna start on my left. Ms. Van Orton.
I'm all set.
On set. Ms. Komersky. Mr. Buno.
Yeah, just a quick update on the superintendent search as I've done the last several meetings in terms of progress. Last week, the board did interview 3 candidates as part of a final round. After much deliberation, the board has narrowed it down to one individual who was selected as our finalist. And at this time, the board attorney and the board president and vice president are commencing negotiations with that individual. So hopefully we'll be able to finalize that shortly and give an update pretty soon on where we are. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Buno. Mr. Mann.
All set.
All set. I'm all set, Ms. Turner. All right, Ms. O'Brien. Ms. Phillips.
Good.
Ms. Steinbach.
This is just a technical thing. We received feedback last time that if we don't speak directly into the mic, it's hard for folks to hear. So just a nice reminder to folks on the board to lean in, figuratively and I guess literally to speak.
Is that a hit?
You were a little hard to hear, Mike, for me. So.
Thank you, Ms. Steinbach. Moving on to, we're going to go into the budget presentation.
Good evening, everyone. And I want to thank the members in the audience who have made a choice to come and attend our budget workshop this evening. This is our 3rd budget workshop. By way of review, our Board of Education, in accordance with New York State regulations regarding the budget process, they have to adopt the proposed budget by April 22nd. So the board will not be voting on the budget this evening. This is our 3rd iteration of the budget. In part, I will review some information that was discussed at our last session and at our previous sessions. I would encourage members of the public to go onto our website and to review information that was presented at the first budget workshop and the second budget workshop, which is available either through board docs, or if you go onto the website, you can see there's an About Us, about the district, and then you go under Budget and Finance, and you should be able to find information regarding previous information that we shared. So encourage everyone to take a look at everything that we've rolled out to the community so far regarding the budget, as this is our 3rd budget workshop. And now it's working. So tonight we plan to talk a little bit about the budget, but we're also going to highlight that the spending plan that we put forth to the community is really a reflection of the quality and the character of our students, our teaching and support staff, administrative staff, as well as the accomplishments of the school district. We have much to be proud of as we face a very challenging budget year, as we've had to look at our budget from a perspective of facing about a $6.5 million budget gap. And every effort is going into recognizing that while we have to close that gap and we have to make reductions, we also want to preserve and sustain all of the accomplishment of our students, our staff, and our community as we deal with declining resources. I'm going to present 3 budget scenarios this evening. Those budget scenarios should be looked at as options, but options that can be tweaked, can be changed, can be adjusted between now and April 22nd, when the board adopts the final budget. And I'll talk to you specifically about those scenarios in terms of the overall amount that we would plan to spend, the amount of the proposed tax increase that would support that budget amount, specifics on the proposed expenditure reductions, including staff reductions within each of the 3 budget scenarios, and the impact on class sizes and programs. Additionally, I'm going to review some history that I did share with our board and our community last time in terms of over the last several years, our board has kept the tax levy increases very low. In fact, when compared to other school districts, we are the lowest in terms of our full value tax rates, and we are the lowest in terms of the average tax levy increases that have occurred over the last 5 years. So we're going to be asking the community to support us with a tax increase this year. The level of that tax increase is still to be determined with discussions with our Board of Education, but we are trying to raise revenues that are recurring within the budget so that we can have sustainable programs. Additionally, we have been made aware and have had conversations with the town of East Greenbush. The town of East Greenbush has recently gone through a reevaluation of property assessments within the town of East Greenbush. We will point out later on that we yield no additional revenue to the district as a result of those assessments. It's a reapportionment of the property values within the community, bringing those property values up to their market value. That affects the individual taxpayers, resident taxpayers, tax assessments that drive their tax rates, but we don't get any additional revenue for the school district as a result of that. And we'll get into those considerations in a little bit. And we'll look down the future a little bit in terms of future revenues and expenditures. Our year-end results are projected this year to be about a $1.9 million deficit in terms of our expenditures exceeding the revenues that are available. So we are utilizing fund balance and reserves, monies that have been set aside by the board and the district for situations in which we need to make sure that we can balance our budget. But we are concerned looking forward that we want to get back on a positive trajectory regarding the concerns that we have related to use of our fund balance. I want to start by congratulating the community, the students, the faculty, the staff, the Board of Education, the families, everyone, our bargaining units. We have one of the best school districts in the region, and the data shows that. In fact, over the course of this last year, 5 of our schools were recognized, 5 out of the 7, as being the best schools in the United States by U.S. News and World Report. Those distinctions are based on academic achievement. The programs that we offer our students, we also, not reflected here, had the highest English language arts and math scores in the region, number 1 and number 2 respectively. We've had numerous opportunities to be recognized by the region, including the Times Union Best School District the last 3 years. We're very proud of that. That's a reflection of the community support that we have enjoyed. We do that because we recognize that we are a community-based school district. We want to make sure that our community understands what we're doing. We try to be very transparent about what we're doing. That's the direction I've received from the board since I was superintendent here. But I think all in all, our relationship with the community is strong. We boast about the work that our students do outside the classroom. We just recently had a group of high school students form a team called Columbia Kicks Cancer, and they raised unbelievably more than $200,000 for leukemia and lymphoma research. That's only one example of the number of volunteer activities that our kids do for the school district and do for the community. There were too many accolades to include in one presentation, so I'm planning on doing additional ones at the next presentation because we couldn't fit them all on the slides. The town of East Greenbush recognizes the students in our community. Spotlight on Youth. Several students, 12 students, were recognized recently at the town board meeting for their service to the community. And congratulations to Donald P. Sutherland, Odyssey of the Mind teams. 2 of those teams participated in the New York State finals. Additionally, we pride ourselves on offering a balanced educational program. academic, arts, enrichment, athletics, music. Our students' artwork is displayed throughout the capital region. That artwork is selected through competition, and we're proud of the work that our art teachers have done to help our students. Numerous opportunities for our kids to display their artwork in the community through regional and statewide exhibits. Our music program, not only do we have excellence in terms of our offerings that we offer in terms of our general music, chorus, strings, band, but we also have had an individual student recognized this year. For the first time in many years, the New York State Music Association has recognized Tristan Murphy, who played in the state band. He's a trombone player from Goff Middle School. And we've had 13 varsity fall sports teams recognized as scholar athletes. And what that means is those teams in total had the students had a 90% grade point average or higher. And so the academic excellence is reflected by the supports and the reflection in the arts and in athletics, including art and music. Additionally, we've had a number of teachers and staff members receive awards. Green Medal second grade teacher Becky Cook was selected to be a New York State Master Teacher. We have several New York State Master Teachers in our district. It's a lot of work to be selected as a New York State Master Teacher. It's not just an award. You have to demonstrate that you have done significant work in professional development. So congratulations to Becky Cook. Additionally, our 8th grade English teacher, Monica Barnes, was selected as News Channel 13 top teacher. We've had a number of News Channel 13 top teachers in our district, so congratulations to Monica. Tom Labardi, who is a physical education teacher and a coach, who also is our strength and conditioning coach, was recognized by the National High School Strength and Conditioning Association as the New York State Strength Coach of the Year. And we've seen his work reflected in all of our teams, because a number of our teams and individual athletes have qualified for sectionals, won sectionals, and even won state championships, including in girls wrestling this year. And additionally, our Columbia baseball coach, Chris Diedrich, was named New York State to the New York State Baseball Hall of Fame, among many other honors and accolades that our individual students have received and our teachers and teams have received.
Mr. Simons, could
Yes.
I, just along the line of the accomplishments, I just want to communicate, the way that I hear it, consistent with what you're communicating, right? Is that, the district has been focused on providing for the children of the district.
Absolutely.
Right. A lot of what you just presented is the work that we focus on to accomplish, for all of the district. When I listen, I always think to myself, if I was a community member, what would I be hearing? Right. And likely what I would be hearing is, but what about my kid? Right. And I say that to say that part of the presentation is to provide reassurance that our direction isn't changing. Right. There are results that we have been achieving. Right. We're looking at the budget with what we may have to do with the mind towards continuing the story of excellence that you just communicated. So I just want to say it's not so much to say all of what we have done, but to communicate a consistency in a way that we will continue to approach decisions that we make as a district. And I just want
I appreciate those comments, Mr. Temple. One of the things that we have to do as a district and a Board of Education is we have to, even in times of financial challenges, we have to try to preserve the array of programs and accomplishments that we've been able to offer the community. So as we move into the presentation and we talk about budget reductions, the framework for which we approach these budget reductions, it wasn't an easy thing to do, was to try to, where we can, preserve all programs and services for the students. Some of those options are accomplishing that, and some of those are still under consideration. So we started on March 12th, and we presented a rollover budget to the Board of Education, and a rollover budget is what would it take, what would we need to spend next year to preserve everything currently that we have, not only in terms of programs, but personnel. And that budget was projected at $118.5 million, which was a 6.27% increase. And at that time, I told the board that's too high of an increase. On average, as we move from one year to the other, our budget increases are generally between 3 and 4%. So we proposed cuts of $2.7 million, bringing the budget to the board on March 26, proposing a $115.8 million budget, which was a 3.7% increase over this current year. Since that March 26th meeting, the board may recall I presented that scenario 2. That was a basic framework for where we wanted to go. We made some adjustments to that scenario 2 to reduce an additional $317,000 in expenses. And so the revised budget that we're presenting tonight as scenario 1 included some additional cuts, not in staff, but in other areas, so that we could bring that budget number down, utilize a little bit less fund balance and reserves. So that was a 3.45% increase over the current year. And we're going to be presenting 2 additional budget scenarios this evening. Scenario 2 is $115.1 million. It's a 3.12% increase. And scenario 3 is $114.1 million budget at 2.25%. I would point out to the community, these percentages are the budget increases from this year to next year. They are not the proposed tax levy increases. So how much is the budget going up as a percentage? It has nothing to do with the tax levy, although in balancing the budget, the tax levy has to be adjusted in order to support the overall spending levels in those 3 budget scenarios. Before I talk about specific reductions, this is information that was reviewed the last time. I got a good question today. Somebody asked me, well, how come there are more instructional cuts, teacher cuts, than there are non-instructional cuts or administrative cuts? And the answer to that is we have far more instructional positions and teachers in our district than we do in those other areas. We have 507 instructional positions, which includes teachers and teaching assistants. We have 261 non-instructional positions. Those are custodial maintenance positions, clerical positions, bus drivers, nurses, other types of positions that aren't classroom positions. And then we have 22 administrators. So when you think about how it is that we're going to have to close the budget gap, mathematically, in order to reduce the gap, and I've often said this, and probably to the point where the board's saying, well, you've told us this before, Mr. Simons, almost 80% of a school district budget is the salaries and benefits of the employees. And when you have a large group of employees, you have to make reductions in such a way in order to close that gap. It's going to affect more teaching assistant positions, for example, than it is going to be able to affect the non-instructional and administrative, because we're starting with more positions. So 64% of our employees are teachers and teaching assistants. 33% of our employees are non-instructional positions, and only 3% are administrators. So 71% of the salaries that we need to reduce are in the instructional category. 23% non-instructional and 6%. Now, I would encourage the community to look at a report that I provided the board at the last meeting. It's a 5-year analysis and summary of all of our staffing positions. It's posted on the March 26th Board of Education agenda. It also will be made available on the website. Since 2019 and 20, right before COVID-19 and the pandemic impacted the district, we have added 36 instructional positions, 12 non-instructional positions, and 2 administrative positions. So when the district has to close the budget gap, the only way to do that is to reduce the number of positions. And as we looked at this, we looked at what did we add over the course of the last 5 years, and now we need to trim back. We needed those positions in areas such as special education, occupational therapy, physical therapy. We reduced class sizes at the elementary school level. We did a number of things to put programs and services in to help the kids bounce back from the impact of the pandemic. We did a really good job at it. But now, given the finances that are available to the district, we need to make those adjustments. The largest driver of our cost increases next year, 70% of our cost increases going forward to next year are associated with employee benefits. It's the retirement and the health insurance. And the big driver of that are prescription drug costs. Those are beyond the control of a Board of Education. Again, 70% of the budget going up next year are employee benefits, with a big piece of it prescription drug costs. So the only way to reduce that impact on the budget is to reduce the number of employees so that those costs are not increasing as much. And again, 70% of the budget is in employees, 70 to 80%. So at the March 26th meeting, we proposed $1.7 million in reductions. They included 14.7 teacher positions. We need to rehire a science teacher position that was cut a couple years ago. And we reduced almost 5 FTEs in non-instructional positions. We also reduced $1 million in non-position reductions, with a net total of $2.7 million of reductions that we presented at the March 26th meeting. Those reductions were included in that budget scenario 2 at the time. Starting with that, since the last meeting, we also took a look at other reductions we could make. We are looking at a position for which a full-time employee received a stipend to reduce that, not have that anymore. We also have looked at our federal funds, and we're recommending that we can shift at least one special education teacher position into those federal funds. So that's not really a cut. It comes out of the general fund budget, and it goes into the federal grants that we receive for special education. So that's not really a cut in a person. It's a shift to a different funding source. Additionally, we are receiving more reimbursement in our school lunch fund because everyone is receiving free breakfast and lunch now. We're getting more revenue into the district. So there are more expenses that we're able to cover and shift into the school lunch fund, including more monitors at the middle school and the high school. The original budgets that you saw included the elementary monitors. Now we're moving the middle school and the high schools into a different funding source. The board challenged us over the last couple of years to use different platforms to recruit new employees. We are utilizing those. We have a new program called Recruit Front. We're also using Indeed and other platforms. We're seeing less activity on a system that has been in place for a long time, which is the online application system. We're proposing to not use that anymore. It saves the district $7,600. We worked with Mr. Goodwin, our technology director, to look at ways that we could review our BOCES budget for network services. We're able to reduce that by $24,000. And we currently work with BOCES to provide a data analyst, which we believe we don't need anymore. So all of those additional cuts amount to the $317,000. So scenario 1 that you see tonight, which I'm referring to, is the budget scenario that has less cuts, reduces the expenses by $3,058,000. So taking scenario 1 and moving towards where would we go if we needed to make additional cuts. Scenario 2 lowers the proposed increase to the tax levy, but that tax levy increase is still above the New York State tax cap for the district. We've heard some questions about what we mean by alternative education program consolidation. We currently operate several successful alternative education programs within the district. Those programs have been very successful. We think we can save costs by moving the CTAP program, which is currently located here at Janae, into the high school. These are high school students. Okay? And providing those services differently by taking advantage of the fact that right now we have a separate program at a separate site with fully dedicated staff, teachers and teaching assistants. We believe we may be able to provide that same model of a program with fewer FTEs by moving it back to the high school. That would amount to 2 teacher positions being reduced and 2 teaching assistant positions being reduced. We don't have all the answers on that yet. We think we can do it. We would be involving our staff in discussions of how we might be able to make that work. The other thing that we found out about this week, we'll have 2 additional classrooms available because Questar 3 is no longer going to be leasing space from us for their special education classes. So there's more flexibility within the footprint of the building to examine this option. So that's an additional $364,000 in cuts. This budget reduces the budget by $3,422,000. That's the second scenario. So all of these reductions, the CTAP change, the BOCES library media system, the BOCES model schools, these are programs that we have analyzed that are underutilized, not used by as many staff as other programs that almost do the same thing. So this is scenario number 2, includes $3,422,000 worth of cuts. Additionally, budget scenario number 1 included a proposal to shift 2 of our current Questar 3 UPK classrooms from our building sites. We currently have 4 classrooms in our schools, right here in our own elementary schools. Every school but Belltop has a UPK classroom supported by Questar 3. The first budget proposal proposed to shift 2 of those classes to community-based providers. We would be preserving the same number of slots for students next year as we have this year, but providing that program differently at less expense. Additionally, this third budget scenario would include moving all of those classes out of the schools and to community-based sites. We currently have 10 classes in the district. Now, we will have 10 classes next year, just provided differently. And I know that we received some communication about this today. So I just want to be clear what the proposal is. We would still have a UPK program. We would still serve the same number of kids, but they would be provided at the community-based sites. The district and the board made the decision a few years ago to add universal pre-K when the state informed us that for the first time we would be eligible for universal pre-K funding. In years prior to that, only districts that were identified as high needs, having higher numbers of students who lived in situations where they were economically disadvantaged, received those monies. However, the cost that we're reimbursed for from the state is $5,400 per student. We've asked the state to consider increasing that. In fact, the Assembly and the Senate have included those increases in their budget proposal, but the state budget isn't finalized yet. So in the event that we receive more money per student, we will adjust some of these plans. But right now, it's uncertain, and we're trying to close a budget gap. The other thing that I want you to be mindful of is during this time, as we added universal pre-K, we didn't shift those costs to the taxpayers. Tax increases were very low over the first 4 years, but we're incurring more than $350,000 of expense in universal pre-K. But we didn't raise any revenue to offset the difference between what the state reimburses us for and what the program actually costs. The budget scenario number 3 also includes an additional 3 elementary teacher positions. The budget number 1 had 5 reductions. This budget has 8. We looked at our class size limitations and guidelines. We could cut 13 in total and still live within our class size guidelines. We are in budget number 3 recommending a reduction of 8. A few years ago, we added a full-time librarian at every school. The program has been very, very good and successful. We don't want to lose anybody, but at the same time, the number of library classes at the smaller schools, in order to meet the expectation, we could reduce from 5 librarians to 4. This reduction would also eliminate the teaming that the board supported at the middle school by adding more teachers when we had the funds available. We could reduce 4 teacher positions at the middle school, but we wouldn't be able to do the teaming. So there is a program loss there, and the middle school alternative program would not be able to be staffed. And we would also propose in budget number 3 to eliminate the 3rd middle school assistant principal that we restored a few years ago. And that would also be the clerical position assigned to the assistant principal. So all in total, budget scenario number 3 includes an additional $975,000 in reductions. The total in cuts for scenario 3 is $4,397,000. So budget number 1 has the fewest cuts. Budget number 2 has more cuts, and budget number 3 has the most cuts. Budget number 3 is my least favorite. But I could find something even though I'm the one who put this information together, there's something that I would find distasteful in every single one. And sometimes when financial resources are limited, it's a choice between what's the least disruptive option that we can afford. So again, total budget for budget number 1, 115.5. Total budget number 2, 115.1. Total for budget number 3, 114.1. Let's talk a little bit about the tax levy increases associated with each of those budgets and the use of fund balance. Budget number 1 proposes to raise the tax levy by 5.19%. Again, our average tax levy over the course of the last 4 years has been about 1.25%. We are the lowest in the area. So we would yield an additional $3 million, and the total levy would be $62 million. Budget number 2 proposes also to go over the tax cap by 1.06%, yielding $2.5 million of additional money. And the tax levy would be $61.4 million. And budget number 3 would propose to raise the tax levy right at the New York State tax cap, which is 3.19%. In order to pass a budget that goes over the New York State tax cap, 6 out of 10 people need to click yes when they go in to vote. Okay, so it is a challenge given the fact that we have not done that in the past. But I also would ask the community to keep in mind that we have kept the taxes very, very low over the last few years. And we need that recurring revenue to continue to fund, as Mr. Temple was talking about, the student-centered programs that we've maintained. So the board said they liked this organizer the last time we presented. Scenario number 2, this is where we started at the last board meeting. Scenario number 1, scenario number 2, and scenario number 3. Scenario number 1 raises the tax levy above the cap, increases the budget by 3.45%, includes an appropriation of almost $7.8 million of reserves. That's a lot in 1 year, and we're concerned about that. The other budgets, scenario 4, lower the tax levy increase, but in the case of the 4.25%, we're still utilizing more reserves because we're losing that recurring revenue when you shift from the 5.19% tax levy increase down to the 4.25. So this budget number 2 cuts more and uses more reserves. And number 3, we work within the tax cap, but we're still using about $7.6 million worth of reserves. So if you're asking me what my opinion is, this is the best budget for the community. The other opportunity that the board has is if the budget isn't passed on the first vote, we have a second bite at the apple. We can come back and we can rework the budget. We can bring this budget down to within the tax cap, but that will include a lot deeper cuts.
Mr. Simon, just to be clear, you're saying scenario number one, the less cuts with the 5.19 tax rate. I'm just trying to make sure, is that what you're communicating? Is what your recommendation?
That would be my recommendation.
Okay.
The average class sizes, looking across the K-5, we shared this information last time with 5 classroom teacher positions reduced. These are the average class sizes by grade level, ranging from 19.2 in kindergarten to 21.1 in 5th grade. If we were to reduce the additional 3 positions, which are part of scenario 3, we would have, the class sizes would go up because we would have fewer teachers to cover the kindergarten through 5th grade. But the numbers are not unreasonable. At the middle school level, the board asked, can we see the current class sizes compared to what they would be next year? Looking at the core courses and the encore courses in 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, the class sizes are all under the established guideline, which is 28 or fewer. Projecting out to next year, this is without the reduction in teaming. Is that correct, Mr. Stiles? Correct. Okay, without any reductions that are included in scenario 3, our class sizes would range from 20 per class to 23 per class. With the additional cuts, again, as I reported earlier, no teaming in grade 7 and 8, and no middle school alternative program, the class sizes go up. The teaming model is an important thing for a middle school concept. It provides an opportunity for the kids and the teachers to develop closer connections with each other because the 4 core area teachers share those kids in common. So they're all in the same smaller learning community. And with middle schoolers, it's an important time in their lives. It's a difficult stage to go through developmentally, emotionally, as kids are physically changing and emotionally changing. So relationships are critically important at all schools, at all levels, but even more important at the middle school as teachers are working to connect with the kids. At the high school level, our current class sizes range from around 22 per class to 28 in phys ed. Projected for next year, they range from 22 to 30 in phys ed. Someone asked me, well, why don't we have more reductions at the high school? To go back to my earlier comments, we tried to look at ways where we could reduce without impacting current program offerings. There are some areas that if we were to cut at the high school, we may not be able to offer college credit courses, AP courses, and elective courses, particularly in English. There are 2 math reductions within the proposed budget. One is affiliated with CTAP, and one would be absorbed, but we would still be able to offer all the same classes. And again, I had mentioned that we need to rehire a science teacher. So the budget pre-K through 12, budget scenario 1, is preserving all of our programs and services that we are providing now. Budget 2 and budget 3 is actually cutting staff to a level where we don't have certain programs next year. Okay. The tax levy history, I had mentioned that the average tax levy increase over the last 5 years have been 1.25%. Even with a budget that goes up, it proposes a tax levy of 5.19%. We still have we have an average tax levy at 1.25%. Additionally, I shared this the last time, when we compare ourselves to other districts over the course of the last 5 years, we are the lowest. On average, across those 5 years, our average tax levy increase per year of 0.51%. And again, our cost per pupil in East Greenbush is aligned with other districts, but we are the lowest in terms of the full tax rate. So I wanted to show you, and thanks to Jennifer's help, the benefit of increasing the tax levy next year and staying at a relatively around the tax cap at 2.7%. With a budget at the tax cap this year, which would be scenario 3, we would raise an additional $1.8 million. And then applying the tax levy increase at about an estimated tax cap of 2.7, in total, over that 5-year period, recurring revenues are about $321,251,310. By raising it up to 5.19% next year and then keeping it at the tax cap, you yield an additional $6.2 million over that 5-year period of recurring revenues. That's the impact that I've talked about in terms of ensuring that you are raising recurring revenue as your expenses are increasing. In short, there'll be $6.2 million more available in 5 years than otherwise would be if we just kept our budget next year at the tax cap and in the next several years. A 1% increase in the tax levy in East Greenbush is almost $600,000, $589,000. That amounts to about $435 per month for an average homeowner with a home value at $400,000. At the tax cap, at 3.19%, we yield about $1.8 million, which amounts to about $13.89 per month. At a tax levy increase, this is budget scenario 2 of 4.25%. We yield an additional $2.5 million next year. For the average taxpayer, it's about $18.49 per month. It's about what I spend at Dunkin' Donuts every week. And at a 5.19% tax levy increase, revenues raised is about $3 million. It's $22.57 per month. So nobody likes cuts. Nobody likes tax increases. But 2 of the 3 things that affect our budget are included in all of these proposals. Additionally, board asked us to take a look at our historical voting. Our community's been very supportive of our school system. We appreciate that. This is the percentage by which our budgets have passed from 2006-07 to 24-25. And we've had a lot of success in recent years with our supermajority vote passing. It will be a challenge this year with a combination of the reevaluation that is occurring in East Greenbush in combination with the district having to raise taxes to this level in order to sustain our programs. 2012-13 was the first year that the New York State had a tax cap, which is really an artificial number. As we looked at how this budget might impact the individual taxpayers, it's important to remind our residents of our community, the board only controls one factor related to an individual tax bill. That's the amount of money that we need to collect from the taxpayers in order to support our budget, called the tax levy. We don't control the equalization rates. Those are controlled by the New York State Office of Real Property Services. That's a formula that adjusts your assessment to full market value to help figure out the distribution of the tax levy across each of the towns. And we serve 6 towns, 6 municipalities. The board is not responsible for individual property assessments. Those are done by the town assessor. But we are responsible for the school tax levy, and that levy does affect the rate calculation. But so there are a lot of factors that go into individual tax bills that the school board doesn't influence. As we've talked with the town, and Jennifer Mulligan has met with me and the town supervisor and the assessor, and she has also had conversations with a consultant that was hired. We just want to make some points. The reassessments that are done by the towns aim to provide equitable property valuations. So people are getting notified now that their assessments have gone up, but their assessments have been lower than the market value for multiple years. They are revenue neutral. As I said earlier, we don't receive any additional revenue to fund our budget. when somebody's individual property values go up through a reevaluation. The tax rates, assuming no changes in the tax levy, generally, as your assessment goes up, your tax rate will go down. Say that again. If your assessment is going up in general, if the tax levy stays the same, your actual tax rate will go down. Individual impact, tax changes are dependent upon the property value shift relative to the town's overall changes. So rule of thumb, when you look at your tax bill in East Greenbush in particular, because there's been that reevaluation done, if your increase is within the average of everyone else in the town, you'll see minimal changes in your tax bill. If it is less than average, your taxes should go down. And if it is more than average, you'll pay more. So East Greenbush has had the reevaluation. About 52% of the school district's total property assessment is associated with East Greenbush. They're the biggest piece of the pie because they're the biggest town. They have the most residents. But we also have the town of Sand Lake going through a reevaluation process, but they're only 1% of the district's total value. And Skodak is about 23%, Nassau 5%, North Greenbush 8%, and a little sliver of Chatham at 0.03%. And they didn't go through a reeval. So we can only project how much we want to raise the tax levy. Some of these other factors that affect the individual tax bills are beyond our control, but we're trying to do our best to be sensitive to the impact of the budget on the taxpayers, to get as much information out there in coordination with the town as possible. Additionally, as we move forward, we are concerned that we are on a trend where our revenues are not keeping up with our expenses. We're projected to spend about $2 million more than our revenues this year, so that comes out of fund balance. And as we move through the years, there are decisions that are going to have to be made similar to the tough decisions that the board and the community face now to make sure that we are bringing our revenues and our expenditures back into line. So we've used some assumptions that our tax levy next year would be 5.19%, and moving forward, it would be 2.7%. State aid, we don't have the final state budget yet, but we're generalizing that the state aid will come in at about 2.5%. Salaries will be about 4.5% increases, and employee benefits is a big concern. We're projecting that it could go up on average 10% a year. It could be more. Other expenditures about 4.5%, and the average across all of those expense categories, we use a figure of about 5.6%. So not having a crystal ball, but trying to do the best to do what the board asked us to do in terms of looking forward. We would anticipate that expenses on average would go up 5%. Revenues need to keep pace with those expenses, and there'll be some cuts that will need to be made as we look at ways to raise additional revenue over the next few years. So going back to how I started the presentation, scenario 1, scenario 2, and scenario 3 have different levels of overall budget amount, different levels of tax levy increases, and different levels of cuts. Scenario 1 has the fewest cuts and the highest tax levy increase. Scenario 2 is in the middle, and scenario 3 is within the tax cap and has the most level of cuts. So the board has a lot of studying to do. They're going to be asking the same tough questions that they always ask, which is their responsibility. Right? And between now and April 22nd, we have to finalize our budget, and we appreciate the community weighing in. And that concludes my presentation, and I'll take any questions, and I'm sorry it went so long.
I have a quick question, Mr. Simon. Thinking about the budget, the 4 scenarios, one of the things that strike me, obviously, we like the idea of less cuts. We want to impact people as little as possible. When we look at 4 scenarios, though, right? But budgets are about people, right? But to put it into a context of operationalizing, there's a need to focus on the numbers that we know what to look forward to. One of the things that concerns me about the budget, looking forward, right? Like there's a large shock going on in the system to stock markets. And we know that Wall Street being a New York State income driver to state revenues, there's a potential with the uncertainty of today's environment that we could be looking forward to a tougher state revenue picture if things persist.
That's correct.
So, and I'm just saying that to say, in my mind, I'm thinking, how do we get on the most solid footing today? So when I think of revenues, increasing revenues, when I think of cuts, right, I'm not just thinking about this year alone. I'm thinking about over time, how do we experience the least amount of cuts through a period of time, uncertainty, if things don't go as we expect? You know, because my goal would be to preserve as much as we can looking forward by stabilizing today. And that's just my perspective as an individual board member. But what I wouldn't want to see is to cut less today and then cut more tomorrow. So what I'm wondering is, and like you said, there's no crystal ball. I'm just sharing thoughts at the moment. I'm interested in hearing everyone's thoughts, but I am concerned about state revenue looking forward with the large crashes going. There's no Wall Street bonuses going out this year, right? Likely looking at the picture. And I'm just saying if things occur, you know, that's
Based on the information that I have from the Council of School Superintendents, I'm part of that advocacy group, statewide group. State revenues are in good shape right now. The worry is the impact of potential federal reductions on money that the state receives, such as in areas of Medicaid. Okay. So in years past, not during my time here, when the state was considering, you know, the impact of federal Medicaid reductions, they did take a look at school aid. Okay. And, but it was also during the time when the foundation aid formula was not found. You know, last year, for example, the governor had proposed that there were going to be cuts in state aid, and now the situation is different. And they're proposing a minimum 3% increase to most districts, and we're going to be getting more than that. Okay, in terms of, because we are a district that has grown in enrollment, where many districts across the state are declining enrollment. So I have a general concern that the federal situation could impact state revenues. It argues in favor of doing what you can to raise those revenues locally. I know that Jennifer Mulligan has presented before that we have made some investments of our cash. There's no way to predict what that's going to yield. Some of those investments earnings have been utilized to include within some of the projections of the use of our reserves. So I don't know exactly what will happen, but I think the concern argues for trying to do as much as you can to raise revenues locally through the property taxes. We're a district that relies more on property taxes to fund our budget than state aid, because we are considered by New York State to be an average wealth district. And in the formulas that the state uses to decide how much aid schools get, when you're considered a high needs district or a low average wealth district, you get more state aid. When you're considered an average wealth district or a wealthy district, you get less state aid, and the formula relies on local property taxes to fill the gap. That's my best answer I can give at the time.
Thank you so much. I'm curious about the board appetite, like for these various scenarios. If there's thoughts about less cuts, more cuts, tax rates, and I just want to throw out there, I would 100% advocate. Like, I know there's a need to focus on a tax rate that we can pass, you know, but I would advocate for a higher tax rate than what's being proposed. I think for the sake of the district and putting us on better footing in preserving positions to the extent we can, I like the idea of 8% tax rate increase. I'm just going to throw a number out there. And I'm curious to see what the board is thinking.
Before we get into that, Mr. Simons and Ms. Mulligan, I wonder, can you do a little bit deeper dive on slide 20 and slide 27? And just the 2.7% moving forward in future years and the deficit.
Can
Just-
you help bring that back up? You said slide 27?
Yeah, so 20 and then 27. Obviously, I'm concerned about the number in red. Yeah.
So
Oh, wait, that
remember
looks,
Jennifer was asked a question.
actually, oh, yeah, perfect. That's funny. Okay.
Jennifer was asked a question at the 2 meetings ago. What's your best guess as to what the tax cap will be in future years? And we don't know that for sure, but she ran through the formula and it will be around 2.7%. So that'll be, it's not guaranteed, but that's our best guess of what the tax levy increase will be. So what we're saying here is if you raise the taxes up to the cap next year, your tax levy next year goes to 60.8 million from the current 58.9 million. Okay, so the additional revenue associated with this, and Jennifer, if I misstep or
Yeah,
mistake, just
that's
correct.
okay. You're
There's
good.
a $1.8 million that you're getting next year in recurring revenue. Then it's like applying it to a new base. The following year, if you raise the taxes 2.7%, your total money available in revenue for the tax levy is 62.5 million. So that's an additional 1.6. Okay? And then each year, as this number is added to this number, your base tax levy is increased, going up about 2.7%. So at the end of that 5-year period, the total amount of revenue raised through the tax levy goes to 321.2 million. If you raise the tax levy next year to 5.19% and stay at the average tax cap over the next, you get 327.4, which is $6.2 million more. Jennifer, can you explain that any differently?
No, I think you covered it very well. Basically, it's the base amount of tax levy and then what you're increasing that year over year. So in 25, 26, if that tax levy increase is higher than the tax cap, then you're establishing a higher base value. And then it compounds year over year after that. So when you accumulate that over a 5-year period, it works out to be approximately $6.2 million in additional revenue, just by increasing by 2% in that 1 year. So basically, we're holding everything else equal in those 4 out years. So just the effect of doing that in the 1 year creates tax revenues over a 5-year period, an additional $6.2 million.
Right. And so can you go to slide 27?
Yep.
Yes. Advance. Peter, can you help me with that?
Right there.
Jen, you're going to take this one.
Yes, that's okay. So that additional 6.2 million is factored in here. So in 25, 26, it is factoring a 5.19 increase in the tax levy. Now you're like, okay, it's only increasing 1.65%. So where is all that tax from? We have other revenue sources like our state aid. We had a good foundation aid increase. However, we did have expense aid that did not increase at that same level. We had some decreases in our expense-based state aids. So there's some offsets that are happening. So that 108 million, this is looking at actual results. So this isn't budget figures. Okay, our budget is our spending plan that has that's funded by certain things. This is looking at revenue year over year. So for example, we have interest earnings, investment earnings. Those investment earnings are projected, conservatively in the budget. However, knowing what we know right now, there's a little bit more in this projection for the out year. But some of those state aid changes, and in your budget books, I think under the first budget presentation, there's more detail on that state aid and also some of the revenue items that are, accumulating as to what that 1.65% increase is year over year. So then when we look at, so in terms of the tax levy increase, this is assuming the 5.19% in 25-26, and then the 2.7% in those out years. Then we're taking actual projected expenditures for 24-25 and projecting that forward based on what we know today. So we're not looking at taking our budget and projecting that forward. We're actually looking at our actual results. So our spending plan per our budget is always going to be higher, or should always be a little bit higher. So we have some flexibility based, instead of our actual results. It's about 2.4% margin, which is not a very large margin. So we're basically projecting all those expenditures out based on what we're spending and projecting to spend in 24-25. So this is important because we can't just look at, when we look at our fund balance, when we're trying to balance the budget, we have our projected revenues, our projected expenditures, and then we have the difference that we're filling with fund balance and reserves. Every year, we may not actually spend that full amount of fund balance and reserves. So for example, it's about 7-point-some odd million that's part of the 24-25 budget that's balancing the budget, the fund balance. We're expected to spend about $2 million of that this year. Going into next year, that fund balance is also still at something million dollars, but we're expecting that we're going to spend 4.4. So as our expenditure trends continue to increase, the likelihood now of spending that fund balance and reserves is starting to increase exponentially. So, so that is where there needs to be a close focus to make sure that that fund balance and reserves is not depleted too quickly, and that there's opportunities to make adjustments, as we move forward to mitigate any future impacts. So I don't know if that
So the
helps.
deficit on here is projected.
Year-end
actuals.
results, actual year-end results based on what we know today. So when we're looking at, we know that salaries, we can look backwards and we can see what our salaries have increased year over year. And that is what's being built into, based on our knowledge of what collective bargaining agreements have settled on, what our health insurance expected trends are. That is being factored in here, in those out years. So
And
that's what these
the
assumptions are.
5.19 plus the 2.7 moving forward is also factored in there?
Yes, yeah.
One quick question. So for the expenditures,
Mhm.
if it's based on actual, do these expenditures for 25-26 include the cuts?
Yes, it does.
It does.
So one of the things, that's a very good question. So when we're projecting out, doing those increases, basically I had to adjust and pull those out of the equation to reflect that. So as we've been making adjustments, these projections have been, in the out years, have been adjusted based on that. So right now, this is all based on scenario 1.
Ms. Mulligan, quick question. Are you projecting changes in utilization of the prescription drugs? So I think that was a large driver, and I'm wondering, in the model, how is utilization being reflected specifically?
Based on our current utilization.
Okay, so we're
So
saying that
things
it's
could
not
improve.
changing.
Right. And,
Okay.
and there's no way to predict
Yes,
as to how the district's utilization, I mean, there could be an unfortunate situation that could change that utilization, in a negative way, or there could be some positive improvements too that could improve that. So that's the one thing when you're modeling future financial results, is that circumstances change and you have to use assumptions based on what you know today,
yes.
which obviously this is a constant moving
Yes.
living document that needs to be adjusted and reflected upon and updated on a regular basis.
And prescription drugs, was that, how much of the increase was driven by prescription drugs?
Prescription drugs specifically, I can't quote it off the top of my head, but
It was a large, like 3 million.
it's really
Yeah.
medical and prescription
Okay.
drugs. I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah,
medical is, when you look at our entire health insurance, it's comprised of two things, the medical portion and the prescription drug. The medical portion is about 70% of the total health insurance cost, and prescription drug is about 30%.
Okay.
The increase, one of the things and the reason that this is also prescription drugs are projected to be higher in the future is right now we're utilizing some funds that are in our cash account. Okay, so we're still expected to have a deficit in the prescription drug account based on today's utilization going forward. So there will, without significant improvements in the utilization of those drugs, we're going to continue to see high premium increases in order to recover from those regular deficits that are occurring today and expected next year.
Only reason why I mention it is because of uncertainty, right? I think what you're communicating is the assumptions is everything staying the same. And although we could have programmatic changes that can positively influence it, if without those, if utilization increase, and I'm going to make an assumption that use tends to go up more because we're kind of at the infancy of, of the market, So I'm just saying, like, with so many uncertainties, I think it's important to consider not just where we are today, but potentially where we could land in the future. Right? When we're talking about cuts, when we're talking about revenues, it's not just about today. And that's the whole purpose of a projection, to give us some kind of insight and recognizing the risk to our assumptions that influences how we should decide, not just for today, but today for the future, and that I just, I appreciate. Thank you very much.
I'd like to hear from other board members regarding any budget questions, concerns, where you stand in terms of viewing the budget recommendations.
Mr. Simons, you have a very detailed list of positions that can be eliminated in each scenario. And I know that for all of us, we have kind of our areas of concern or our areas of focus. My children are very active in the music program. So for me, I feel a personal pull towards that. Other people, their students might be interested in the arts or have someone going into preschool. I think we all have like different areas where we feel invested for board members, for the community, for our staff. So are you able to give us a brief rundown of how you chose which positions we felt could face elimination versus others, just to help us wrap our heads around why these are where they are?
I'll start at the pre-K level. The question I ask myself is, can we still provide the service in the program, but do it less expensively? And so the recommendation to shift the two classes that are included within the first scenario, the community-based providers, accomplishes that. Albeit I will recognize that in most cases, the parents like having their child, their 4-year-old in a district school. So the criteria I applied, can we still run a program that serves the same number of kids, but do it less expensively and have it not charge the general fund as much as it currently is? Then I go to K-5 classes. Okay. I looked at we put together the study that was done regarding the staffing levels over the last 5 years. And we realized that there were concrete decisions that were made to adjust those class sizes down when we were coming through the pandemic. There were also some situations in years where we could have reduced the class sizes. We could have increased the class sizes more and reduced staff. We chose not to do that because we had concerns about continuing to make progress in early literacy and math. We used our Renaissance Star data to make determinations as to what we needed to do. And we also maintained a level of AIS services, academic intervention services, to help the kids in reading and math. There was also a period of time where we hired a lot of brand new teachers at the K-5 level because we were required, as you remember, to do a full remote learning program. There was a period of some years where we didn't want to lose great teachers, and we had the resources available, and we still wanted to keep those class sizes where they were to give the kids more time to recover from the pandemic. But now looking at it, there were 36 teacher additions, not at the elementary level, but 36 total teacher additions in that 5-year period without the revenue to support it. So how can we reduce positions at that level? And the other thing that we've considered was we have 5 teachers retiring. And in budget scenario number 1, we don't have to lay anybody off. Right, so that's how the decision was made at the K-5 level. The additional 3 would likely result in layoffs that are included in scenario 3. Okay. Going to the middle school level, we work with the building principal at the middle school and the high school. Okay, what is your number of 5th graders moving into 6th grade next year? What are your number of 8th graders moving out and going into the high school? Can you reduce? How much can you reduce and meet the mandated programs for all 4 core areas? Physical education, health is required at the middle school level. There's a technology requirement at the middle school level. There's a family consumer science credit at the middle school level. So middle school has a lot of regulations where you can't reduce without not offering something that's mandated. So you can't really make it. So where we could make adjustments, we would have to not organize the kids into teams. And that's included within the 4 reductions that are included in budget 3. So that's how we looked at the middle school. There wasn't a lot of ways to reduce there without getting rid of the teaming, which also impacted the math program. At the high school level, we looked at a mock schedule of the courses that could run in the schedule, including all the required courses that the kids need to graduate, and then all the courses that were necessary for students to make sure that they could graduate with 22 credits, including the elective credits, which is a New York State requirement. There are the core classes, the required Regents classes, 9th grade, 10th grade, 11th grade classes have higher numbers in terms of close to 30 in some departments. So if you reduce there, you have to hit the electives because you can't go above the 30. And you can, by contract, it's not really academically beneficial. There's a ratio of payment that you pay the teachers if you go above the 30 in the contract for class size and course load. So what are the electives? There are kids that want to take 4 years of a foreign world language or a 5th language. Okay, those kids are already planning to do that. There are kids that are on a pathway in business to get a credential that they have completed that business component. So we shifted the business position to a part-time cut in art, part-time cut in tech, and a part-time cut in world languages. Okay. So the only way you can reduce there is to reduce elective courses. And when kids get into their senior year, junior and senior year, they need those elective courses to either A, get the number of credits that they need, or they're on a track to earn a particular, credential that they want to achieve. Or because of some of the senior courses are semester based, you need to have a pairing. You need to have an English course first semester that's paired with another course second semester. So when we looked at all of that, there wasn't a lot of room to really reduce at the high school either. You could do it, but if you did it, it would reduce the number of options that children have to take elective courses. And some of those elective courses would be the college credit and the AP courses that are not only beneficial to the students, but when those kids get to college, they save on the wallets of the parents, which is very, very important as a parent who has a kid in college. who started her sophomore year, her first year in college. I mean, and many kids graduate from our high school with enough credits to be considered technically a sophomore in college, and they are on, a pathway to, if they needed to get an advanced degree, they could do so in 5 years instead of the normal pathway. So these were the things that we considered. We considered the academic impact at all levels, right? Nobody likes class sizes to go up, but class sizes in general going up spread sort of the impact of the budget across the entire district. The one music position that was reduced, 2 people retired. We plan to replace 1, and we're looking at the schedule of the music at the elementary school level would have to be done a little tighter. But it was to try to preserve academic offerings to adjusting class sizes and reflecting on staffing levels that we can afford today versus the staffing levels that we could afford 5 years ago. I don't want anybody to have the perception that we hired people that we shouldn't have. I think it's important to go back 5 years and remember what the impact of on student academics, chronic absenteeism, student mental health, literacy rates across our country were very, very difficult. But we did, doesn't change the fact that we added 36 positions at the instructional positions, and we now need to reduce. During the same period of time where we got a lot of foundation aid and we got federal monies and we provided for the programs and services, we're not getting that level of state support anymore. And we also kept the tax levy increases really very low. And so now we need to readjust. But scenario number 1, while it does cause concern about the increase in the tax levy, preserves all of our programs and services, albeit with fewer teacher positions. And there may be a couple of layoffs associated with that, depending on what happens between now and June with people who may not have been eligible for the retirement incentive. So they didn't have to submit by February 1st their letter of intent to retire. We could get more retirements in June, and we could get some non-instructional retirements because they really have till the end of the year to let us know. But that's how the decisions were made.
When you,
And I tried to provide equity. And I also want to point out, it's a great question, Catherine. There are different ways we could have approached this that I did consider and then I ruled out. And I'll give you an example. People might say, well, why aren't you cutting athletics? We pay a $5,000 stipend at best for a coach to run a program that benefits 25 kids. So I looked at the cost of eliminating modified sports, which some districts have done in financial crisis. You hurt a lot of kids and you save $5,000. So the benefits of that program far outweigh the costs for kids and student engagement. We could trim back the number of assistant coaches that we added over the course of the last few years at the varsity level. That's something that we could take a look at. It doesn't save a lot of money. We could look at after-school clubs. The total budget for clubs, I forget it off the top of my head, is around
Yeah, around 220 to 240.
$220,000 to $240,000. We could look at that. We could make some adjustments to that. I wouldn't recommend reducing all of them. The art offerings that we have now would still be offered. The music offerings that we still have now would still be offered. The athletic offerings would still be offered, but you could look at how those teams are staffed with coaches. One of the trade-offs there is, you have an emergency or a situation where you have one coach supervising a team. You're relying on volunteers. We've had volunteer coaches. But if you're at an away situation, away game, and the trainer isn't at that particular game because he's at another game, and there's a medical emergency, somebody needs to stay with the kids and somebody needs to go to the hospital with the kid. So you need to have a level of staffing in sports as well. Could you live without it? Yes. The other one is intramurals. We offer an intramural program, which is an after-school program run by our physical education staff. Doesn't cost a lot. Do you remember the quote on, the total on that?
About 36,000.
$36,000. Cutting the intramural program doesn't even save a teacher position. So these are the kinds of things that we have to weigh and look at. But across the board, we tried to be balanced. We tried to look at everything. We tried to not hit a total elimination of any program, but we were also closing a $6.5 million budget gap. So, thank you for the question.
Can I just piggyback on that? I think it's an important question, but I wonder when you say we, when you're involving and talking about, the middle school, are we, I'm assuming, and can you confirm you're talking with those principals, those administrators in the school to understand what they're thinking as well?
Yes.
Okay.
We had multiple meetings with the principals, either individually or in a group, before we rolled out the first budget presentation. We're having ongoing conversations with the unions about the impact of this. I let the unions know that we were going to be recommending reductions, and we're still trying to find ways to save money between now and when the budget is voted on in the community. And we're also, even if, once the budget passes, we continue to look for ways to reduce the costs and potentially what the impact would be on staffing. So, yes, the administrators have had input into this. The staff has been made aware of it. It's very challenging to have the staff have, full input to this, because the staff members and the teachers, they're going to focus on the impact in the classroom and support, and they shouldn't do that. It's really our job to try to figure out how to provide that support with less money to be able to provide the levels of staffing. So yes, there has been input in general, but
One of the things, from the state level background, right? You have years where you're flush and then, trim. And when you receive an order, right, that you have to cut your spending by 2%, it's a blanket right across the board. How the agency actually gets to that 2% is up to the agency. And I think that's, I look at it here and I know I can't copy paste, how we operate in the state sphere agency wide to a school and the school buildings. But it's hard sometimes because it does, and your explanation about why it looks like the high school is so, untouched in comparison to the elementary schools. It's still hard for me, I think, even with that, to kind of understand and grasp that. I think that's a lens at which I, have looked at it and come through, and I think the public, can see that as well. And it's hard. It's hard to say that, but at least I think you're including, right, the principals. But I do appreciate the exercise. Like, if you have to cut 2%, what would you get rid of, or what would you cut? And it often it's a hard exercise, but it's exercises that folks are even getting ready to do, at all levels. So just a comment there, right? Because those folks know best what's happening in those buildings, or where they can do without, like the assistant principal at Goff versus, I don't, know specifically the assistant principals at Columbia, and, the administrative, right, costs of Columbia versus Goff, and how you decide that. So I think, including those folks is great, and I appreciate that. And I know it's hard conversations and no one wants to have them, but I do feel like they probably know best than, no offense to, Jen or anyone else. Can I just ask a clarifying question? And we had talked about this last time. Obviously, everybody knows I talk about pre-K enough that people are over it, right, with me. But
I don't think that's true.
I have the two little ones, but what I don't think I understand is that when you say you're gonna save the 185, that is the delta between what we get reimbursed versus what BOCES charges us.
Correct.
And that is at the reimbursement level that we currently have, that's not the savings if we were to go, if the state was to accept in this budget, the increase to 7. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So will that then be adjusted because you're technically not going to be, if it passes, and I wish, right, we were at the point where we had that budget and we would know because it'd be better. But you'll be adjusting this and the savings is not going to be the same that you're projecting. Is that correct?
We'll receive more state aid to offset the cost. So,
There would be less savings.
yeah, there would,
Yeah.
Yeah, so when you say the savings is 185, you're assuming that it stays flat, correct?
so for example, so basically the cost of the Questar program per student is $10,500 approximately.
Mhm.
The state aid is $5,400. So the delta is the difference between those two.
For sure.
So one of the things Mr. Simon said that we would take a look at was whether or not additional state aid could help evolve, how that program is delivered.
So that's an evolving conversation,
Yeah,
correct?
correct.
Yes.
At this point in the budget, it's only the 2 rooms. However, scenario 4, the most cuts or more cuts is the additional 2 rooms,
That's
correct?
That's correct.
Now, my question is that we wanted to, we know that there's always a wait list and we reissued the RFP, right, to see if anybody would take on additional.
We did not do an RFP.
Oh.
We said we were going to wait through this process to
Okay.
see, because at this point we weren't looking to add classes.
But
For the
we,
CBOs?
we talked to them about. what
You
they're-
talked to them, so you have confirmation that there'll be potentially 2 rooms
Sorry,
that
not
can
a
be
CB
absorbed?
Sorry, not an RFP. So I have had conversations with the pre-K sites to see if they do have the capacity to take on, if we were to move 2 of our classes that are at on-site to off. And they, 2 of them right now they want to do it. They're evaluating their spacing to make sure that they can fulfill that, need and requirement. So I didn't want to give them a hard answer because I know we're having conversations. So I actually told them that I would be getting in touch with them again later this week after our meeting here to see where we were still thinking, to try to see if we could firm up if that's a 100% kind of go that they could add a class.
And is the BOCES, Jen, is that reimbursable or no?
No, because the state aid, that $5,400 per student is the
state aid, it's
that
not
we
our dollars. Oh,
receive.
gotcha, okay.
So it's not BOCES aidable, it's through the UPK funding stream.
Yeah, I mean, I think, I understand. I think it's really hard to conceptually agree to that when we don't actually know that these CBOs are going to accept those 2 rooms. It's hard to be okay with that and make those
Right.
promises to the
Right.
community when I don't necessarily feel like that's a promise I'd be willing to
And I
make.
guess I would say if that aid increase doesn't materialize and those community sites don't, then we would have to find another cut in the amount of that
Equal to
180, was it
185.
182,000?
185.
$185,000 to offset that. I wouldn't recommend just doing it and then using more fund balance. We would have to find another cut that equates to the same amount of money. And if we were going to maintain the program the way that it is right now.
So I would, last time an audience member talked about bringing somebody in, not using Questar, but using somebody else in our building. Did we get an opportunity to talk about that? Because we could get to the 5,400 and still be in our building.
We talked to one provider regarding that who ran it up the chain and said it wouldn't work for that agency. We also have some concerns. One thing that the Questar program provides and the community-based is there's an administrator hired by them to coordinate and oversee the program. By moving a community agency into the building, our principals absorb more supervision responsibilities. We'd have to talk with them about that. We haven't said we can't do it. And we also, I don't know that would come with somebody from the agency being on site to help in the supervision, but those are our reservations about it. It doesn't mean it couldn't happen, but those are our reservations about it.
I'm a little hesitant to have two off and then two on. It's almost like they're all or none, like, because then you're gonna have people wanting to fight for the two that potentially are in the buildings. And, I almost feel like, and again, it's very important to say, we are not getting rid of the program. We're moving them.
Right.
And if we can guarantee the quality being the
That's-
same,
you
then we
can't-
need
you
to
can't,
consider that.
Michelle, you can't guarantee the quality. That's the,
But I don't know if we can even guarantee it in this building, right? I mean, is
I
that?
think the board had a desire, or at least expressed the
Yes.
desire of the board members to try to do what we could to have a level of coordination and supervision between the community-based PK providers and the Questar program. And that has been Mr. Stiles' responsibility. It's a little bit challenging because of the scope of that. 10 different, classes.
Mhm.
Done a good job with it. And in those cases, there is a point person. For example, the principal of Holy Spirit is the primary supervisor of that program. Mike Burns is the primary supervisor of the Questar program. The director of TSL is the primary supervisor of TSL, tutor time, et cetera, et cetera. But there are differences in the programs. But every program is required to be aligned with the New York State Education Department universal pre-K guidelines and to implement a UPK curriculum. So it has to be beyond childcare. It's not just childcare. It is a set curriculum.
Right, and we have, if you remember, we had some discussions regarding that, how we have multiple agencies providing services. So this year, we decided to give our Renaissance Star assessments to all of our UPK classes. So we gave our mid-year benchmark to all of our UPK classes, and then we'll be giving an end of the year benchmark. Looking at that data along all those classrooms, based on that point, you're not seeing any significant differences in terms of this site has 95% of their students, quote unquote, at grade level, and this site only has 60%. I don't want to give you the exact number, but there are less than, a handful of students, out of the 165 that are not on their way to being prepared for kindergarten. I think all of our sites, being different, are still all doing unique things, and students are, really are learning and progressing.
Nice.
So I think that's one good point to have, a common point, which is new this year, and we're going to continue next year as well. The other thing that I can say is, as we've worked with the different organizations, building a relationship with all of them, we're continuing to support them in different ways. Lisa Mahara has done a lot of really great work going and providing some support in some different classrooms. We've purchased, some different, phonemic awareness, curriculum. We've done some different things. We're not just saying $5,400 a student and, and kind of go off on your own. We are, doing our best to, make sure that they're, working.
And if the
students are
child
learning.
needs speech or anything, are they getting all the speech opportunities wherever they are, regardless of whether they're here, or is that different? I don't know how that works.
There is they are referred to the Committee for Preschool Education. Jessica's nodding her head yes, so I guess I'm on the right path. The Committee for Preschool Education, those students, 3 and 4-year-olds, I believe, are referred in general to the Committee for Preschool Education. And if they're identified in need of speech services or occupational therapy, they are eligible for those services as determined by the Committee for Preschool
Correct.
Education.
And it
those
doesn't
services
matter
are
where the
delivered.
location is.
Doesn't matter where the location is.
I just, I'm happy, we don't need to continue to talk about pre-K, but I just feel uncomfortable guaranteeing that we're not eliminating and we're moving if we only have a conceptual conversation with the organizations and not necessarily a commitment, especially when you talk about going potential scenario 3, which is the most cuts. Now you're looking to find 4 rooms, so 2 additional rooms. And it's uncomfortable for me to guarantee that that aspect. And I know it's one that we talk about and we hear from the community most. We always have wait lists. So that's something that I personally feel uncomfortable with because it's not a guarantee.
Right.
Other positions, when you eliminate, when you do sort of cuts, I understand that. But to me, that's not a guaranteed savings. And I don't think, hopefully the number is not going to be accurate. We'll see in a week, but
Well, I would
we
just
don't need to
say
talk
it's not a guaranteed savings right now. None of this is a guaranteed savings. These are all proposals that are still under consideration.
Right. So yeah, okay. Can I like zoom out now that, we did that? Can you go back to slide 12? So essentially what you're saying is that on May 20th, whatever I'm sorry, this one, 13, my numbers are different. Whatever we go out to the community on May 20th, that's chance number 1. And we need on one, do we need 60% of the vote on scenario 1? We need, and scenario 1 and 2, we need 60. If we go forward with 3, what percentage needs to approve that?
50%.
50 plus 1. Okay.
50 plus 1.
Okay. So really what we're looking to do, Jesse, I think back to your original question.
Yeah.
We're looking to see 5.19 versus 4.25 versus 3.19, understanding that the 1 and 2, we would need 60 or 61%.
60 plus
60
1,
plus
I
1.
guess.
You would need that number of folks, right, to approve it.
And thinking about the survey, who responded, in my mind, mirrors a lot the school board vote.
What
question-
survey? I'm sorry.
So like the survey, I want to say like we had 1,200 responses, right?
Superintendent survey?
The superintendent survey, yes.
Oh,
And I want to say a big portion of that was staff from the community. Like was staff in the survey. And what I'm trying to say is if we have a turnout similar, like I'm fairly confident that the community will support, right? If we're supporting the community jobs, right? I'm confident that we'll also have the support to pass a budget. And especially if we commit to the taxpayer looking forward, that we're going to be fiscally conscious, we're going to hawk on expenses moving forward. And the whole goal is to reduce driving up revenue as we look forward, as we're doing this year.
I think I definitely hear what you're saying. I think that the superintendent survey though, if you're looking at staff, I don't personally know the ratio of staff that live in district versus
Yes,
out.
I know.
So I think it's hard for me to agree with that because of course staff are staff are not going to want
Yes.
scenario 3
Yes.
because that's their job, right? But the community members who maybe don't have children in the schools anymore, or the seniors, or I don't
Yes.
know, whatever.
Yes, absolutely.
Maybe they send their kids to private school and they're like, why I'm not going to want to pay anymore.
Yeah.
Those folks I think are what, and those I think, are the ones who will come out, I think, as well. Right. And I don't know the staff
Yes, for sure.
ratio. I'm just not informed enough to agree. Conceptually, I agree with you, but I don't know how the numbers look.
I agree. One thing I would just add, and I agree 100% with you, Emily. It's just that what I would say is, I think the community, when you speak about the seniors, individuals who send their kids to private school, I think in general, we could expect all of our taxpayer to want to benefit kids in general and to want to see to the community, like we are a major employer in the community. And I just think that, along that line, it's really just a lens of how do we approach spending. I think taxpayers just don't want their money wasted, and they want a message that we're fiscally conscious and focused on how we spend as we approach.
I think for sure, I would agree with that because what you hear, the conversations, and even on my own street or when I go for a walk, it's the reassessment and how much you're paying more in taxes, but what am I getting for that? Yes, I understand the value of my house, but what more am I getting? And so I do think that's how people think. And so you just have to hope that the folks who don't feel invested in the school communities still feel that way and are ready to pay for that. I think the angle that I think is important is that we've had it low for so many years.
Yeah.
And we've actually had it low that like folks wave a red flag and say, you can't have it that low for that long amount of time and expect year not to come out and have to do a catch up or multiple years of catch up.
Yeah.
Because of the point that Samantha and Jen brought out is like, it builds on it, right? So if we have years of the 0 or the 0.5%, we're not building on that year over year, right? We not only took that loss that one year, but we're taking that loss every single year moving forward. And that's why it's not fiscally sound to have it so low for so long, because then you do have to, you're in that part, when it comes time to,
Yeah.
it comes due, right?
Yeah, no, I hear you. I would just say also, one of the challenges is that even if it drove up, there's no guarantee that the spending level wouldn't creep with it. And I just think that looking forward, there has to be a commitment towards monitoring the spend level, for sure.
Well, that's why I think 27 is an important slide because it does show
Disaster.
increase in revenue and bigger deficits. That's my concern.
So even if we do scenario 1, which is the 5.19, next year it's another bleak
Mhm.
outlook,
Mhm.
correct?
The thing is though, is that like there's some assumptions built in, and the truth is it could be better, it could be worse, right? Like if utilization increase and tax revenues come in slimmer, right? And I think personal income taxes is the main driver for state revenue. And I don't know that the information that we get updated would be the most current given, I think, the tariffs just went in place. So I don't even know that updates have occurred yet. And I am concerned about the future stability. And that's the only reason why I'm harping that point, because if state revenues come in less, utilization increases, I think really we have to think about being aggressive this year, because that's the way that we preserve programs. That's the way that we preserve positions, because facing another, potentially challenging year, I think, that's just my position. If we take our medicine now, we're in a stronger position.
Right. So if I can just point out a couple of things to help support this conversation. When we look at this tax levy increase versus passage rates of the budget, you do see budgets that included tax levy increases ranging from 3.7, 4.27% that passed by 71, 72%. You also see budgets before the tax cap that the community came forward and passed by 50% that raised taxes 7.25% and 9.15%. So I think there's challenges regarding this, but you're also, one of the things that I know is certain is that our community supports the educational system of the district. It's one of the greatest assets of this school district. So I think, going out and explaining the budget as we did with the capital project, as we have in previous budgets, and getting out in the community and talking with people about this, I think we stand a better chance of getting that 60% vote. The other thing I wanted to show just briefly, and I'll just say this, and I don't recommend doing it, but there have been some conversations with me and the board about how do you get out of this faster? The challenge becomes what you need to do versus what you can get support for are two different things. What you ultimately should do, if this was a pure financial equation and people didn't vote on the budget financially, you should raise the taxes to that level and make the cuts to that level. Okay. Increase the budget 5.19% and make the reductions associated with scenario 3. But that may be too much for the community and the school district to bear in 1 year. So My recommendation for this is with an understanding that you're going to have difficult choices next year and in the following year. But I don't think you can pass a budget that does this level of tax levy increase and this level of cuts, given the fact that we have multiple stakeholders that vote on the budget. So, but ultimately, we've talked about, how do you get out of it faster? That's what you'd have to do.
So I think we're going back to your initial question, and I know we haven't heard from everybody, so maybe if the folks who haven't spoken yet want to say something, we can then
Yeah,
get a better
I
idea
can
of where
certainly
we are.
speak to some of these things. So I think that I would support something over the tax cap at this point. I'm not going to anywhere near numbers you just throw, Jessica. No way. I think that there has to be a combination of what Mr. Simon just said. There's, slide 27 is clear that if you don't control those expenditures on that side, you're never going to get out of this, ever. And I need to be assured, and I think the people in the community need to be assured that we are taking the appropriate steps to make sure that we're addressing cost containment in the district through a combination of looking at different benefit levels, looking at different structures of staffing, looking at anything that can take that number down, because, if you're going to assume those kind of numbers on the expenditure side, we'll be taxing people 5, 6, 7% for years. So, you got to do more. I mean, I was okay with probably scenario 1 until I saw this slide. And then I'm thinking, well, if I don't see any more cost control efforts this year, and I think I mentioned this last year, this is not going to work. You're going to see deeper cuts in the future. So I think I need to see something more about what is the plan to work through some of these issues. And I know it's still early in the process. We have a few more weeks. What are we looking to do to address those issues with our staff, through our bargaining, through our cost control measures, through CASHIC, through other sources that we can adjust some of these numbers, because we have to see it go down. There's no way the community's going to support multiple years, because you do 1 year, you look at that thing, once you get to a number that's like 4 or 5, you pay the price for the next several years. And you saw that earlier in the graph, right? We saw a large increases for 2 years, and then the margins on those votes was super slim. So I think that's you're paying the price. I do want to make sure that we preserve programs to the best of our ability. I'm not looking to do anything related to programming. But I think that absent a plan going forward on cost control, the numbers that you're looking at here are just not sustainable. So I am supportive of going beyond the tax cap levy. I need to see more. I need to see more variations, because, slide 27 to me says the community's gonna be paying for a long time. I think we also need to go back and look at history and, some things about why do we tax people more. We were going through a period of time where state revenues the foundation aid was fully funded. We had, like you said, this, Jeff, already. We had people who were going through some very challenging times in the community. And the decision was, as a board, to utilize those resources, support students and families by adding, 35 to 40 positions over that time to help with kids and to put in the UPK program. So we did a lot to support our families and our students and the community at large. I think that one thing that people appreciate of too is that we're a very community-focused district. Our capital project will be so tremendous to all our community members, young and old. And I think that's what kind of thing attracts people to our district. And they probably would have paid a little more to get into that capital project, but we made it cost neutral, which was great. So we made these decisions that will draw people into our community. So I'm hoping through growth, through other areas where the district can expand. We have seen flatter a little bit of growth in our student population, but we've also seen a lot of growth in our community. But I think with these kind of numbers, I need to see something more. I'm not willing to go, beyond a 5%. Again, that's my opinion. without, seeing some other projections, but I think we're on the right track in terms of needing to go for tax levy. I think we're pretty close. I know there's some more work to be done, but, sustainability for any of our programs, and that was a UPK, and I was a supporter of UPK from the beginning. I pushed it hard, and, the board back then really talked about, can we sustain this for our community members? It's a great benefit for our younger learners. It got them to kindergarten and great preparation. I think we really need to take a hard look at that. So we want to sustain that for the long term. And it may be move into a community-based organizations fully. If the quality of the programming and the preparation for our kids is going to be there for kindergarten. So that's what it's about, preparing them for kindergarten, preparing our families, helping them support those bridges. But I need the administration to go back and look at some more details on some of this before I can really kind of commit to any hard numbers. We'll do. Okay. Thank you.
So at what point, Mike, though, do you, if it's the expenditures, right? It's the salaries and benefits, right? That's the driver.
I know.
Otherwise, you're like chipping so much away and you're not even making, you're making incremental choices, but that's really the driver then. So how do you get that down? I think it becomes the question, right? And it's the prescription drugs. And
Well, we've
it's the-
seen districts, and Jeff's been there for a long time, who had to gut their programs, and basically they offer a basic education and no other opportunities for kids. And that's wrong. And I think that we have to look at doing things differently.
Yeah.
It's got to be innovation. It's got to be taking advantage of technology. Hopefully through the future, through AI, we can deliver programming to kids through distance learning or through virtual means to give them access to college courses in different ways. And not that our staff are not doing a tremendous job with that. I know there's some restrictions on what we have to do from an education law standpoint, but we have to take the path of innovation too. And I think that's really going to drive maintaining the excellent program that we have. We're a people business. I understand that. So
Yeah.
it's that balance, like you said. What can we do now, and what can we do in the next couple of years to continue? Okay, that's all I have.
Thank you. I'm curious to hear from other board members about position, their comfort levels and what they hope to see from our current financial picture. I think it's a very critical time for our district. And it is a challenging conversation, right? The truth is, no one wants to make anyone pay more. No one wants to cut. But we are facing, and my optimism comes from, I'm hoping our projections, won't come to be to the extent that they are, like that's my hope. But at the same time, I think positioning for controlling risk, I really enjoy Mike's emphasis on cost containment. I think it's critical that we come back and that we reflect and show that, and I'm just wondering, board members thinking what best position us looking for the future.
I'll go. I think the 5.19 is almost a given. But like Mike said, these projections, my understanding is the 25-26 year here includes the cuts, but then the forward years are a rollover from what those cuts are. And I'm assuming that we're going to need to continue cutting at the very least through attrition and maybe more. The farther we get into this, the more we're going to end up having to cut down the road because these numbers are not going to be getting better. So I don't want more cuts now, but I think we need to look at it, and I think we need to project what we can cut going forward because our reserves aren't going to last that long.
Thank you.
Yeah, I would also support the 5.19 going above the tax cap. I definitely would not support anything above that or like the 8%. Yeah, it's hard to feel good about it when people's jobs and programs might be on the line. You're trying to keep as much intact as you can without stripping away too much. And I think as the graph shows on 27, we're in for some tough times, not just this year, but next year. I think we don't have any control over the health insurance costs, as any business owner knows. And I just lost my train of thought. I'll get back to you.
I lost my train of thought,
Thank
so.
I was just question, Jennifer, we're a homestead, non-homestead district. correct? How does this going to impact the non-homestead? We have an understanding about that. Is this kind of all wrapped up into one? Doesn't really matter what that number looks like.
You mean in relation to the reassessment
Are
The
or,
business
allocated.
community,
I'm sorry?
it's a non-homestead taxpayer.
Yeah,
It's the
so.
business community, right?
So basically, as part of the tax rate calculation, there's these base proportions. We have to live within a certain range of that. So for example, last year during the tax rate setting process, we were able to maintain the homestead, non-homestead proportions,
Okay,
which allowed the tax levy increase to be equal between the two. So in other words, it didn't distort
okay.
how the levy was proportioned between the two. Now, it could have moved, but it was maintained, moved meaning it would have moved in a negative direction towards more of the homestead class, I guess, depending on your position. So that can vary every year when the town releases their base proportions, and there's a couple of formulas that we have to look at to make sure we're living within the range. But ideally, if you have a tax levy increase of X, you'd want, the tax base to have a similar increase. You wouldn't want to play with shifting too much, as long as you're living within the legal range.
Yep.
So that's still to be played out,
Gotcha.
but there is a range that can be lived in that, would be looked at.
Thanks.
So-
And the other question I had, the graphs where you showed class size guidelines, are those contractual guidelines?
Yes. But you can exceed those, and there's a formula to pay the teachers extra.
I have a quick question. Could we go to slide 20 on page 21, please? So just talking about the tax rate and the impact on
Do you want to just mention we'll have public forum? I know.
It's coming up right after this.
absolutely. Looking at this chart of the impact on households for a $400,000 property. Jen, does this account for the apportionment specific to homesteads?
So this is considering everything that we knew for the tax rates
Yeah.
for the 24-25 year.
Okay,
There is a lot of things that will come into that formula. So there's going to be changes in assessed value outside of reassessment. There's generally assessment growth in the town, in the various towns on an annual basis. The equalization rates
yes.
are updated annually. So it's really difficult to predict, but what we looked at is, well, what is the full value of the town, the full value tax rate? And we use that. So it is considering everything held equal.
So
If
just
there was
the
a levy
homestead levy?
increase of,
This is just the
no,
homestead
this
levy?
this is the district as a whole.
Okay, so it's the whole tax levy divided by the homesteads, like number?
The tax levy is split between, not evenly split.
Yeah.
Don't quote me on it, but I think it's about a 65-35% of apportionment. I'd have to confirm
Okay.
that, but I'm doing that from memory from a while ago. But the homestead and there's certain rules in the real property tax law on how that those base proportions, and now homestead and non-homestead gets apportioned. Okay, so in general, this is a $400,000, assumed $400,000 full value, assessed value, that's being taxed.
So looking at this tax rate and saying at 5.19%, in the impact of an householder with a $400,000 property, we're looking at a $22.57 increase on that householder. And mind you, I don't think it's a light ask. Like, I'm not trying to minimize the ask at all, right? Like no matter how much it is, it's that at the end of the day, we are asking, our community for additional revenue. However, I do look at it like, so the difference between the 1% spread is about $4. So when we say $8% levy, we're talking about that $4 3 times. So we'll bring it to about a $34. I'm doing back of the envelope math here.
I appreciate it. And I'll just chime in. I will not support that. I will not support that much. And we really need to figure out how to be fiscally accountable, because if we continue down this road, no offense, we'll be bankrupt. So we need to figure out how to balance. And I hope you would agree, Jeff, that, 5 years from now, we will not have any reserves left. So we need to figure out how to balance cost savings along with this increase. I am fully in support above the cap. I will not go to 8%. That is unfair to the population in this district, in my view. I want to make sure, I appreciate that, Jesse. I just want to make sure if we all are in agreement that we're not going to do that, I think we need to move past that. So, if you want to kind of take a involuntary vote or whatever, so we can move past that. If anybody feels they want to support it, that's fine. But for myself, and I think the others, I'm not interested.
Well, what I'm hearing is that in general, the majority of the board supports the 5.19% or around that, but wants us to come back with more reductions in expenses.
Yes.
Okay, and maybe some of those reductions would be long-term expenses that could be reduced. The only caveat I would add to that, and I know Mr. Buno knows this, some of these ways of reducing long-term expenses require negotiations.
Yes.
Okay, and we are not in negotiations with any units other than one currently, and that unit represents our lowest paid people. So we may be able to find some other ways to reduce expenses now that will put us in a better trajectory moving forward. But what I'm hearing is you'd be willing to do it, but you want to see more, us sharpen our pencils and cut more.
We want a longer term plan. This was exactly what the worry was when we start seeing all those fund balances being used, was like, we're never catching up. Revenue is this and expenses are this. And how do we try to balance it a little? And it's not going to be instant. It's going to take a few years at least to try to cross back over that path. But that's really what I'm looking for. So yeah, I think I absolutely support something over the cap as well. The one area I am a little concerned about, and it's probably not, unless we go with the 4, is the middle school. I'm concerned about how much effort we put into that team, whatever building team thing in 7th and 8th grade. And I think that's maybe scenario 3, and I don't have to worry about, but that is, we've made such good progress in that middle school, and I don't want to.
I share your
see
concerns. Again, as I said earlier, there are some things I put on a list that I find distasteful, and that's
Right.
one of them at the top of those.
Okay.
Can I just offer a slightly different perspective? So I agree that it's probably not going to pass the board, but I wonder from a public perspective, if we could just run a extreme scenario, because there's members of the public that obviously don't want a significant increase. There's also members who don't want public education that they value so much to be cut. And so I do think we could just run a number so that we're, communicating this and showing the range of options, so that when voters come on May 22nd, they're really looking at, the full
May 20th.
or- was it
May 20th.
May 20th. Don't listen to May 22nd. That they're really able to sort of make an informed vote on, the range of options, like, and really, I think seeing the budget extremes that we would need to make, I think that really could help wrap public minds and perceptions around what we're looking at in that longer term
I
scenario.
think that's a good idea.
Yeah, we could could we send a survey out? Is that allowable, reasonable, fast enough?
I don't think a survey can be structured in such a way to really have folks understand the challenges. I think what Sam is talking about is present a scenario, not necessarily that we're going to roll this out to the public to vote, but present a scenario at a meeting that raises that increase above the 5.19% to show what the trajectory would be if we were to do that.
Right.
To really kind of illustrate the
Yep.
gap we're trying to close. right?
Absolutely.
But not necessarily come
Got it.
out and ask them would they
I got it.
support that, but just to show, the depth of the hole we're trying to come out of
Right,
and how we're trying to stop digging in order to get out of it now.
right,
So you'd be adding just another line to this chart
exactly.
Right.
Yep.
Basically,
with a,
basically,
That and probably I think looking at
Page 20.
slide 27
and rolling that
and
in.
seeing how that,
Good.
yeah, thank you. If you could do that, I know it's a tremendous amount of work, but thank you for doing that. And it is May 20th. Just wanted to-
all right.
Thank you for your patience.
Yes.
your patience.
Okay, moving on to public forum. Residents, students, employees, and business representatives of the East Greenbush Central School District may address the board on matters concerning programs and/or operations of the district, other than matters involving personnel. Members of the board do not directly respond to citizen concerns during the public forum. If a response is appropriate, either the president or superintendent will contact the individual in the near future. Those persons wishing to address the board will be addressed by the chair of the meeting and should state for the record their name and address or affiliation with the district or business. While the board does not wish to infringe upon free speech protections, it must be stressed that the visitors forum is not deemed to be an open forum. The board president will conduct the forum for the orderly and efficient operation of board business. In addition, any remarks which may be considered defamatory or stigmatizing are prohibited and will be declared out of order. All comments shall be limited to 5 minutes. Any comments? Yes, please.
Never done this. Do you want my name and address? Yeah,
Please.
Trish Repant, 517 Pioneer Road, Castleton, New York, 121033. This is, I'm Trish, that's Frank, this is Ella. We're together and Amanda is also with us. You can't answer questions or you can.
We are allowed to if we want to, but we may not know the information, so we'll have to see what the question is.
Okay.
We will get back to you with a response either way.
Okay, so we're here about the CTAP program and we're wondering what you're thinking it will look like next year.
I will share with you my preliminary thoughts on it. My honest answer is I don't fully know as of this point. We have looked at the program in years past. And the program is excellent and I support the program. And I've visited that program many times and interacted with the kids and the staff. It's an excellent program.
Does the board know what the program does?
Yes, they do.
Because
Yes. And we-
before she got in it, I had no clue what it
serves
was. so-
children who are not comfortable in the larger school environment, who benefit from the smaller environment for various reasons, and provides the same high school program in terms of the requirements, but in a much smaller setting. And it's a family setting where the kids can connect with each other, feel more comfortable, less anxious, and do well academically. And the kids do well. The program is expensive per child in part because in order to meet all of those high school requirements, you've got to have an English teacher, a math teacher, a science teacher, and a social studies teacher, and a PE component, and all of those things. But when you add all of that up, for such a small number of students, it's $59,000 per kid. I'm not saying that it's not worth it. I'm saying we might not be able to afford it in that model right now. So my thinking is we're in the same way that we're studying the option to move the UPK kids to another option and still preserve the services. We're looking at the CTAP program in the same way. Could we locate that program in an isolated setting, in a smaller setting within the high school, possibly with a different schedule than the regular high school, which some of the alternative programs there already have a separate schedule, with a dedicated entrance, dedicated location, creating a smaller environment within the school? And could we still provide the same core instruction in utilizing that less staff? By having it at the high school, you have to look at the teachers' schedules there, the special education teachers, the AIS teachers, the core area teachers, and you might be able to, and I haven't said, I'm not convinced we can fully do it yet. You might be able to save money and provide the same core instruction as well as the psychologist services and the social work services, but reduce the amount of staff because it's in the same location rather than having a separate location. That's what we're looking at to see whether or not that's feasible to still meet the needs of the students. In the way that we're looking at this, we're trying to make sure that the students that are in the program now, not the graduating seniors, still receive the level of quality and care that they receive now, but it would be at a different location. We may be looking at not putting new kids that come from middle school into ninth grade in that program. We haven't made that determination yet, but that's where we are with the planning.
Maybe we can just have a separate conversation at some point because I don't quite see, I understand the concept of it, that you're saving money, and I understand it's a very expensive program. But I don't understand how moving it is going to change that if they're going to continue to be in their separate location. Well, like I said, you don't need to
I will get in
explain
touch
that
with
to
you,
everybody.
and when we
That's-
have more details, I think we'll have a nice conversation about it.
Okay, that's
Okay.
perfect.
Okay.
I want you to know this program was, and search my prayers.
I understand.
It saved her, and without it, I don't know where we'd be. So I understand everyone has what they want to save. An art teacher, he loves art. This program saved her life.
I understand.
So I don't know what else I can say besides that.
Man, when I first moved here, and I'm thinking nostalgically because I'm retiring, but when I first moved here, I was trying to find a location to store some stuff. And I ran into a parent who said the exact same thing that you said, that Mr. Simons, you're going to learn about this program called CTAP and it saves kids' lives. So I'm
And no
not
one knows about it.
insensitive to that. And I want to preserve that, a program that meets those needs. I just want to find a way to do it cheaper
And I
without
also,
hurting the program.
I work in Hudson School District. They have a similar program, but I talked to the principal there who says she loves the idea of this program because it is a separate setting.
Understand.
And that's part of what makes it work. So people want what you have. So if you take it away, it's
I've
sad
also,
to
just
me.
so you know, I mentioned at the last meeting, I reached out to other districts because we have had students from other districts attend our programs and pay revenue to the district for doing that. And I have at least one district who's responded to that. It may not be a student that would fit within the CTAP, but I am making an effort to try to offset the cost of that program by bringing in tuition-based students from other districts. And so you weren't here at the last meeting, but I am trying to, at the same time, I'm recommending and looking at ways to change it. I'm also looking at ways to preserve it. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Ella Rapant. I'm a 10th grader at Columbia High School, and I attend CTAP. And it's important to me because it's a safe space with no fighting, no kids. You don't have to worry about bullying or anything. It's really safe. And I'm scared that if we did go to the high school, even though you said it would be in like a separate space, that we would still like interact with kids from the high school and have to worry about them still. And I know many kids at CTAP that would be anxious about that. I like it because it has staff and teachers that work with you and stuff. So like you don't have to worry about like they work with you. And I just don't know how to say that part. You already said it. So I don't know.
I think you did an excellent job.
Thank you very much.
Hi, I'm Frank Rapant, same address, 517 Castleton, 517 Pony Road. I don't have much to add. It's just been a good conversation. I have this letter that we did mail out to everybody involved here, but we weren't able to do it in time to get it in your hands tonight. So I made some copies to distribute if I could. It's not quite enough to go around the whole table, but there's 10 copies here and you can fight over them.
Spell your name wrong.
Yeah, I'll apologize for the typo. I would just like to add that rather than reducing CTAP, we should be increasing funding to it. I know that's a ridiculous thing to say after this whole meeting, but it's so important. It saves lives. I know nobody wants to hear cut sports, but save lives. Thank you.
Sir, I didn't hear what you said when you said increasing. What did you say after that? I just didn't hear.
I said, like, nobody wants to talk about increasing spending,
Oh,
but,
okay.
but increase
Right,
CTAP.
okay.
Don't cut it. It deserves more than a cut. It's a great program and it is saving lives. So if I could just ask you to, thank you. Thank you all very much for your time.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Amanda Tedford. I'm the out of district student in CTAP. I live in
I didn't
Rensselaer
know that.
actually, so right there. I started when I went into my freshman year. I lived in Castleton, so I was an East Greenbush student at the time. My father passed away in February of last year, and my living situation, I couldn't live there. I moved in with my aunt, who is a Rensselaer person. She's right out of district, so that makes me a Rensselaer student. CTAP let me finish out the year last year, and then they had a negotiation with Rensselaer to let me stay this year. I don't know if any of you have been teachers or, you've all been students and had teachers, but my teacher showed up for me when my dad died, and that was very important to me. I don't know if you've had anyone ever do that for you, but when you don't know your own family, but you have people who aren't related to you who are family, that's very important. And I don't know if you would get the same kind of relationship and things at Columbia. Not that I'm not saying that the teachers there aren't great, but you build sort of a more personal connection, and I think that's very important. And just to consider. So,
Thank you.
have a good night.
Thank you.
I also wanted to add, the first slide with the DPS Odyssey of the Mind team. We were one of the original. We started when my daughter was in kindergarten. She's now in college. So we started that. Yeah.
Thank you.
Any more public comments?
Hi, my name is Joan Frio. I live at 11 Robert Lane, Rensselaer, 12144. I've been in East Greenbush since 2011. And as a parent of the district, I've experienced firsthand how the educators and the programs offered benefit the students in East Greenbush School District. My oldest son, Sean, you guys are very emotional. It's very contagious. Sorry, that was not in the script, I promise. My oldest son, who graduated in 2018, was part of the Operation Graduation Program. And I assure you, 100,000,000%, if that program was not in place, he would not have graduated. My youngest son, JT, is actually spent K through 5 with that wonderful principal. He still emails her. He's in 6th grade. He thinks it's great that he can email his other teachers from past. He will one day have a position here, so yes. He's currently in Goff and he is thriving. He is actually on the honor roll. To hear about the cuts to the programs, it is really disturbing and it is discouraging. My kids are polar opposite. I've got young Sheldon and I've got my kid who could have cared less about school. But because the teachers at Columbia made Sean feel like he was something, he is now, he thrives. He's an adult. He's 25. Ugh, I think I showed my age a little. He still goes back and in his head and he's like, if it wasn't for those teachers, you know, I bump into them here and there. How's Sean? You know, so it's a community. I understand everyone has a job here and I understand that cuts need to be made. I'm a parent with a one salary home. I'm willing to pay scenario one. Okay, like you said, Dunkin' Donuts. Okay, I'll have to cut back. It's okay.
I'd probably spend more there than that, but I didn't want to.
I was thinking you were getting a cheap coffee there. I was like, "Whoa."
Our community takes assurances in the fact that our school district provides opportunities for students of all learning abilities and backgrounds to succeed. When you cut a program for a diverse group of students, you're going to take away from the success of not just the students, but the teachers, the staff, the administrators who've created the community of East Greenbush. As a parent, I am fully supported, like I said, of the budget that has the fewest cuts possible, the fewest hiccups for these children. We can't just wake up next year and have these kids lose what they've known. They lost so much during COVID. We're just going to rip that away from them again. Like, we just can't. There has to be some sort of middle ground. And scenario one seems to be in the right direction. Is it perfect? Probably not. Could it be better? I'm sure. Like I said, my youngest son, he's currently in Goff. He is on the honor roll. He needs a lot less help than Sean did. But knowing that Operation Graduation was there, he is now a successful adult. And that's all we can strive for when we put our kids into school, is that they come home every day and they come home happy and that they've learned something. And every kid learns at a different level. I firsthand know that. My youngest is literally little young Sheldon. My oldest is as polar opposite as could possibly be. They are 12 years apart. I could not have been more opposite if I chose. I see both sides. A kid who is needing minimal help, maybe doesn't need team time, but the majority of the kids need that team time. So we need to remember, yes, there's a dollar bill for every time that we sit here and we need to worry about that, but you need to worry about the students because they're the ones who are going to be in charge at some point. And we need to make them successful. We need to stay at 2025's top school. Are we going to be able to do that if we take teachers out of the equation and cut them and don't replace teachers? I'm not really sure how that adds up. Math is not my strong suit, but I can tell you that that doesn't work. So with that, I do appreciate your time and I thank you for allowing me to speak.
I want
Yes,
to
Mr.
say
Simon.
that I appreciate, and I made a little joke in between there, but I really do want to say that I appreciate your advocacy for the differentiated needs of the children and your classic example of two kids that are very different.
I do.
One of the strengths of this district is that we have programs for kids that need the extra support. And then we have the AP and the college classes, and we try to challenge as well as support kids.
It's true. Yeah.
And
I literally live it
just
every
to
day.
hit on it, but I just want to reiterate the CTAP proposal is part of scenario 2.
Yep.
And we're looking at everything in each of the 3 scenarios. So I appreciate your comments and you know.
And
thank you
remember,
for
the
being here.
teachers help the students succeed.
Right.
So without the teachers, you're not going to have successful students. Hence, you will not have successful community members. And East Greenbush will not be what it is now.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. You have to go home and make sure someone's ready for school in the morning. So thank you.
Any more comments? All right. Next on the agenda is capital project planning. Mr. Simons.
Yes, we're moving forward now that spring is sort of here, although we got snow last night and this morning with our project at Columbia High School. Thank you all for coming. With the replacement of the roof at Columbia High School and the tennis courts and the basketball courts is starting soon. We're going to have a capital project steering committee meeting tomorrow night to go over some of the details of that. We have 3 board members that have been on that, Mr. Temple, Mr. Buno, Mr. Mann. We're also planning kind of a groundbreaking ceremony. That will be Friday, April 25th, and you'll all be invited to that, where we start getting the shovels ready and doing what we need to do. So we're excited about it. We said we were going to get this done. We're ahead of schedule. And that's what's happening with the capital project.
Thank you, Mr. Simon. Utica National Insurance Group School Safety Excellent Award for 2025. Mr. Simons.
Yes, I want to thank the staff, the community, the board, and everybody involved. East Greenbush Central School District for at least 20 years, I lost count, has received the Excellence Award from the Utica National Insurance Group, which is our insurance carrier, for our excellent record on safety. And that safety includes the bus operation, transportation operation. It includes the limited number of issues and accidents that we have in our schools. It includes our safety policies and our practices and our safety infrastructure. And since Mark is leaving the board, I also want to recognize that Mark has been a staunch advocate for the school safety program over the years, and ours is excellent. So this says, in recognition of the school's outstanding efforts to create a safer school environment, and as a direct result of the school's diligence and adherence to safety principles prescribed to safety group members, this certificate is hereby awarded to the East Greenbush Central School District, and we get a $500 check. So I'm going to present this to Mr. Temple as representative of the board, and we will hang it in the boardroom.
I'll just say, I hope that came with a discount on the Utica National Insurance.
I think, how does it work? We get a check, or does it actually apply?
Does it go to like scholarships or something?
That's what the letter. Do we get $500?
We may.
I mean, we had it for like
Yes,
25 years in a row. I mean, you think they give us a little bit of a discount here?
Remembering the district's safety efforts and a check for
Titanium.
$500 for use as reimbursement and or in connection with the school safety program.
So
I
then,
don't know if we
yes.
got the check.
I don't know if we did. I'd have to follow up.
We did?
Oh, we did?
Very
Yeah,
good.
didn't
All
even
right.
know that.
Very good.
Starting that cost containment early here.
$3. Congratulations, everybody.
Moving on to the March for Our Lives, Guilderland Secure Firearms Storage discussion item.
So Mr. Mann asked me to put this on the agenda. The students in Guilderland are part of a group that is advocating for a group called the Chapter of March for Our Lives, which is a youth-led movement to make sure that people know about the importance of gun safety and proper gun storage, including a bill that is in front of the New York State Legislature right now. So he asked that we have a discussion of it. So I'll turn it over to Mr. Mann.
Yes, so my goal was to ask Mr. Harkin of the high school if maybe they could reach out to our counterparts at Guilderland and see if we can enter into some type of maybe a partnership with them. This was an organization started by some survivors of the 2018 school shooting in Parkland, Florida at the Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School. And these 2 students were in the school that day. And they began this, they started this organization to try and get people to understand that, guns in our schools are hurting our kids in our schools. So Gilderland reached out to us and I did, looked into the program. I think it's worthwhile and I would like to see if maybe our high school would be able to reach out to like Gilderland's high school. See if maybe they'd be willing to come here and see if we can enter into some type of a partnership with them. They're looking at the month of June as Gun Safety Month. So maybe we can reach out to Mr. Harkin to see if possibility that our high school could reach out.
Be happy to do that. Comments?
Yeah, I love the idea of this being student-led and working in collaboration with another high school. They did point out in their letter that, as you were saying, Mark, the focus of gun safety, that the state safe gun storage legislation now is not yet, into law. So they're looking to get it through both houses. So yeah, anything we could do to support this effort, I would be happy to support.
Yeah, I agree and support it as well. As a victim of gun violence myself, I support anything that, helps bring awareness to safe storage of guns and proper use to, try to, keep guns in the rightful owner's hands. I think their immediate ask was to send, guidance to families in the community on safe storage. And I couldn't, agree with that more and happy to, put any effort toward that as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Hearing no objections, I'll talk to Mr. Harkin and I'll ask him to reach out to the Gilderland High School.
Thank you.
Or
Thank
to high school.
Next on the agenda is approval of programs for resident children with disabilities. Any questions or comments? Is there a motion to approve? Ms. Phillips, a second. Ms. O'Brien, all in favor? Everyone's in favor, motion passes. Next on the agenda is a memo of agreement with the EGTA. Is there any questions or comments, Mr. Simon?
Just briefly, this is something that we have been doing. There are certain individuals that are part of the EGTA that need to work in the summer. Our CSE chairs and our MTSS coordinator, Lisa Mahar. So in practice, we've been doing this, but we want it memorialized in the agreement that they are authorized to work a number of days in the summer for which they are paid. Most teachers are on a 10-month contract. So it is an additional cost. It's a cost that we've already been incurring.
Any questions or comments on this? Motion to approve. Mr. Mann, a second. Ms. Komersky, all in favor? Everyone's in favor, motion passes. Any tabled motions? None. Old business?
Jesse, just quick, is there anything on the ex officio student updates, Mr. Simons or?
Yes, Mr. Harkin has left, but Mr. Harkin emailed me this week and said that he had received the letters of interest and he wanted to, I think he's in the process of reviewing those and setting up the committee to review those.
Did he have anything like, want me to come in and talk to anybody about the process? Because that was one of the things I think is.
Yeah, I think he's
Gotta be in the
received them
letters.
all. He has them and he was going to set up a
Follow up.
follow up with the committee.
Perfect.
Yeah.
All right, thank you. All right, the consent agenda, any question or comments? Is there?
Just one question on the food service helpers. Are they getting funded by the food pro? Okay.
Yeah, so they're currently submitting timesheets right
Yep,
now. So
right.
they're already working these hours. We're setting their contractual day to reflect what they're currently working and making sure that they're offered the appropriate
But
level of
the
benefits.
funding is coming out of the
The
food
reimbursement,
subsidy.
all out of the
Great.
food service. Yes.
This was an adjustment that should have occurred earlier because they were working and time slipping the hours based on changes in the lunch schedules, and they are eligible for all those hours to be in contract and benefits. And all those salary and benefit changes are part of the food service funds.
Great.
So in practice, we were doing it, but it wasn't aligned with, they're eligible for benefits when they work 6 hours a day, 6.5 hours, 5.5 hours a day. In other words, they were out working a schedule that they're out for benefits and they were entitled to them.
Right, right. Some of them were under the 4 hour and they're actually working more than that.
That's correct.
Thank you.
Is there a motion to approve?
Quick comment. I just want to say thank you to Stone Management for the donation. Very generous to the art department. But I'll make a motion.
Mr. Buno.
I
For
second.
first, Ms. Komarski, a second. All in favor? Everyone is in favor of the consent agenda. It passes. No addendum. Any new business, anyone? Our last public forum. Thanks for hanging in there with us. We lost quite a few. And our last board forum, starting on my right, Ms. Steinbach.
No, I think I enjoyed the conversation tonight. So thank you, everyone. I think it was a good conversation and moving things forward. Also, I'm excited on Thursday, to travel around the world, so to say, at the multicultural fair. So excited to go to that on Thursday.
Thank you.
Also,
Ms.
thank
Phillips,
you.
all set. Ms. O'Brien,
Okay.
Ms. Turner.
I'm good.
I'm good. Mr. Mann. Thank you. Mr. Buno.
No, I appreciate the conversation. Difficult times demand attention and good conversation among the board members to make sure that we come to the best resolution with our administration to propose a solid budget that supports the community and the kids and the families of our district. We're not in it here to be selfish as board members. We're all in it as volunteers to make sure we do what's best for our community, and that's why we're here. And we will do our very best to everyone out there who's listening or hears this. We're doing everything we can, and the administration is doing everything you can. Working together, we will get through this process and make sure that we propose the best budget we can and supports our kids and families, like I said, and the staff and the community. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms.
Well said, Mike. It was a difficult conversation, but necessary, and we have more of those coming up. So hang tight with us and we'll see through it together. And ask everybody to try to have a good spring break as well, coming up very soon.
Ms. Van Orten.
I'm all set. Thank you.
And I do want to echo the comments. I really do appreciate the contrast on the board. I think, having different perspectives brought to the surface really kind of elevates the considerations. I know I have my own natural disposition. I know we all have our own. I just think it really brings out the best of to represent it all. And we do have a need for executive session.
Yes, we have some issues to discuss related to the employment history of particular individuals.
All right, so I need a motion to adjourn the meeting. Ms. Steinbach, second. Ms. Turner, all in favor? Everyone's in favor. And we need a motion to go into executive session. Ms. Steinbach, a second. Ms. Komarski, all in favor? Everyone's in favor. Motion passes. Good night, everyone.